Thank you everyone for coming tonight. It's really great. It's fun with a new venue and all that, but possibly nobody would turn up. You know that feeling you get when no one's going to come to your party. But lovely turnout, so that's really, really good. My name is Chris Rand. I'm acting chair of the Queen Edith's Community Forum and editor of Queen Edith Community News. For those of you who live in the area, which looks like most of you should have all had the latest issue in the last week, so if you haven't had it through your door, do let me know sometime, because I can chase up the delivery people then. Welcome to the Queen Edith's hustings for the forthcoming City Council election. This is the only regular event of its kind in the city. We started it, I think this is the fifth one we've done now. We started it with the help of the students at Homerton College, I think in 2014. We've run it ourselves ever since, which has been terrific. The support has been fantastic. Every year I get people from other parts of the city saying, we should have this in our ward. And I always offer to help and show how it's done and everything, and no one else seems to do it very often, so well done, Queen Edith. That's all I can say. We'll have the usual format we've had in previous years for those of you who've been before, which is some background questions from the chair in the first half, that's me, and the candidates all seen these, and we'll have some sort of prepared answers, that sort of thing. Then we'll have a short break, and in the second half we'll have questions from the floor. However, we will do it, I think, as we did it last year, because that was successful, which is to ask you during the break to write down your questions. There's a table over there and some little sheets, and then you can do that, and we'll just go through them and see if there's any themes we can bring together. We think that's a better way of doing things, because there are one or two people that don't like to stand up and ask questions, but have got something they want to say. And occasionally also, it does avoid people from the floor standing up and making speeches, which can also be a risk. At the during interval, there's water and soft drinks, not quite our usual standard of catering, I'm afraid, but there's biscuits, and we've done our best. And on the way out, I'll go through it at the end, but there's a usual exit poll, which doesn't ask you how you're going to vote, but does ask you if you've changed your mind or were swayed at all by the evening. As ever, I'd like to keep it fairly informal. Definitely non-confrontational if we can, and I'd like everybody, candidates and audience, to show respect for the time and effort being offered by these candidates to stand as a city councillor, because as anybody here who's done the job or whatever, or worked closely with someone knows, it is a tough job, and I can see that even though I've never done it myself. What is the election? Just to make sure everybody knows, this is election for a city councillor. The city councillor in Cambridge, or city council, is responsible primarily for planning, so that's obviously something that's very close to a lot of people's hearts around here. Housing, obviously a very, very important part of the council's responsibilities. Leisure facilities, and domestic rubbish collections. So there are other things as well, but they're the ones we mainly focus on. There are 42 city councillors, there's 3 each from 14 different wards, of which Queen Edith's is one. We have 3 councillors at the moment, who are Colin McGurty, Jenny Pagecroft, and George Pippas, who is standing again and is on the panel of the candidates tonight. Normally they would be standing for a 4-year period, but there's going to be changes to the council ward boundaries in a year's time, and so next year everyone's going to have to stand again. Next year we'll be electing 3 councillors. I'm quite happy to do hustings, whether we can do it with 12 or more candidates here, but that'll be interesting, but I've got a year to think about it anyway. It would have been a bit different this year. We normally have 4 candidates. We should have had 5 this year, because we have an additional one standing, but at the last minute, our Green Party candidate, Elizabeth Whitebread, is not able to be with us. She sent her apologies. It's the first time we've been missing a candidate in the 5 years we've had these events, so there you go. Didn't have to have an unbalanced tables either side of me, though, for that reason. So Unfortunately, you won't be able to ask questions of Elizabeth, but she did do a small preview of what she thought, which was in Queen's Community News. And I haven't seen any Green Party literature around, but maybe some of you have. So it may be available. And we do the normal way of doing things to keep fair is I have my bag of Lego bricks and we pick out the colours one at a time to see what order the candidates will go in. So that's me done with, you'll be pleased to know. So the first thing I want to do is just ask all the 4 candidates to introduce themselves in about a minute or so. I'm not going to be tight on time on anyone tonight, unless you really go over. But a minute or so to introduce yourself, and your background, why you're standing, that sort of thing. So nothing too demanding. And we'll start with our City Councillor, George Pippat.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. My name is George Pippat, and I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate for the May elections. As you can gather from my accent, I was born in Cyprus. I'm a member of a large family. There's 9 of us in the family. I did my primary and secondary education in Cyprus. When I finished, I joined the army for 3 years and I served as an officer at the rank of a lieutenant. When I left the army, I came to Cambridge and I gained a degree in engineering. I've also got a second degree in maths and business studies. Plus, I am an honorary fellow of the Anglia University. I worked in various companies within Cambridge and outside Cambridge. Cambridge Computer Graphics was one of them, Pioneer, for those who remember Pi, Philips. I worked for ICL Sobers, and the last company I was working for was Polaroid. I was a European export manager responsible for Europe, Russia, Middle East, the whole of Africa, India and Pakistan. I have, currently I own a guest house, a Mowbray Road next to the Queen Square roundabout, which I run with my wife. I was elected first time in 2011 as your councillor, and I was re-elected also in 2015. I am now one of the candidates to be elected for the following year. During my time as a councillor, I served the community diligently, been a member on the various subcommittees, such as planning, licensing, I have housing, and when I was in licensing, I did introduce the compulsory testing of all the taxi drivers, health tests, because they were not tested before. And these committees are non-political, they are manned by cross parties, and their aim is to get the best deal for the citizens of Cambridge. Another role of the councillor is casework. People who have concerns, whether you're a single mother looking for housing, whether you're a disabled person and you want your door fixed, these people approach the councillors and we try to do the best we can to make their life a bit better. Most importantly, during my time as councillor, I was involved with the refurbishment of the roundabout at Addenbrooke's Hospital. I'm involved also with the redesign of Fender Road roundabouts, and I was also involved extensively at the Nightingale Park with the introduction of various sports facilities, new seating, the new pavilion, and the final thing I've done is I was unanimously elected in 2017-2019 as the mayor of Cambridge. It was a great honor for the Queen Edith to have a mayor representing the ward in the city. And during my time, I was able to lead the city during the times of grief, like we had the Brentford Tower, and during happy days, like when we had the wedding, the royal wedding. And And also my foreign nationality has provided an opening to other EU nationals and other ethnic communities. And they all felt very much inclusive and that they matter here in Cambridge. Although I'm not the mayor anymore, the relationships continue, and I use them as an honorary councillor to support the community cohesion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George. As luck would have it, the colours have come out in order across from right to left. So next up is Dan Grief.
Thank you, Chris. My name is Dan Grief, and I'm the Labour candidate again here in Queen Edith's ward this year. Now, hustings are very interesting events, and I thought before I talk about me, I want to find out more about those who are here tonight, because my suspicion is that most people may have decided already who they're voting for, because you're the people who care the most about local politics, and that's why you're here this evening, so maybe you made your decision already. So, by a show of hands, and this could backfire spectacularly, I understand that, by a show of hands, if you've decided for which candidate you wish to place your vote against next Thursday, can you please put your hands up now? Okay, excellent. I'm wrong, that's good. And those who are undecided, could you put your hands up now? Okay. That's great news for us then, because it means that now we've got the opportunity to talk to the people who haven't decided, to try to talk about the reasons that we're standing. So my name is Dan Grief. I'm my husband. I have two children, Hannah and Noah. Hannah and Noah are under the age of 4, so it's interesting times for me right now. Maybe you can relate to that. I stood here last year in Queen Edith's, and even though I think we all know this is a Liberal Democrat safe seat, I'm standing here because I care passionately about this community. I honestly believe that we're facing some quite large changes in this ward over the next few years. In particular, if you think about the change to the biomedical campus, I don't always think that we talk about those things enough as we should be. And I think that's what's going to affect us for the next decade or more, and that should be a big part of our debate. I'm also standing because some of the biggest issues affecting our ward, including crime, which is on the increase, there are transport problems, there are housing problems, and also the impact of the environment, which we see with development. So they're the reasons I'm standing, and that's what I'll be talking about this evening. But I want to share with you a story, because quite often when you're standing in an election, you start talking about what you think. And what I've been really struck by this time was canvassing and talking and listening to people on the doorstep. Now, one lady in particular, I met her last year with her husband. Unfortunately, he passed away, and I was working on a piece of casework with him. And I realised for her, the biggest problem was loneliness. And that is a big problem, not just affecting the whole of this ward, but affecting the whole of our city. And in many ways, it made me realise, and I've learned over this last year from canvassing this area, that we need to do a lot more to work with the community to help those who are in need. Now, I'm proud to be standing for Labour Council, which is a Labour-run council, which has made a massive difference to the lives of many people across the city, in particular the most vulnerable, and has really ambitious plans for development across the city with new houses for those who most need them. But I also think we should do a lot more locally, and we can do a lot more locally to help those who are most in need. And hopefully later on this evening I get to talk to you as well, but I'll ask you a vote on the 2nd of May. Thank you.
Now, another candidate who we're familiar with from standing in the previous election, this is Manas Deb.
Good evening, I'm Manas Deb. Many of you may know me. I stood before. I'm a Conservative candidate for City Council election. I'm a chemical engineer and a local businessman. I have 2 factories where I produce organic, inorganic chemistry and also some industrial cleaning chemical. I provide employment to some people, and I supply my chemicals to mainly textile industry. That's what I do for a living. Before setting up my factory 12 years ago, I was working for a large American multinational. I started as a junior salesperson in that company and left the company as a sales director for Europe and Asia. I live at the heart of Queen Edith in Nightingale Avenue with my wife and son. I've been involved in the community since last 18 years, and I serve in the local community every day, every month. I'm very passionate. I'm a passionate Remainer, and I remember going out with Donald, leafletting in Queen Edith, and campaign very hard to remain, and I believe in people's hope. I have a track record of raising social care issues and also fighting for residents' voices to be heard. I've been campaigning last 4 years to solve parking problems, particularly the roads nearest to Edinburgh and opposite Hills Road, Sixth Form College. As you may know, a lot of Edinburgh visitors and Hills Road, Sixth Form College visitors, they would block and gridlock pavements. Residents find it very difficult to park near their homes. I'm also campaigning to reduce parking charges in Edinburgh's multi-story car parking for their staff members. And I've requested Edinburgh's Trust to introduce parking charges based on income level for their staff members. I'm working with our Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority Mayor as mayoral advisor. I was appointed last year by the mayor to help him as advisor, and in my capacity I'm working with him closely to ensure the South train station in Edinburgh site is delivered on time, which I'm sure will help us reduce traffic congestion in Queen Edith, also to ease pressure on South train station and improve connectivity with London. Cambridge has been hit hard by bike thefts in last few years. The Cambridge police data alone shows that over 4,296 bikes were stolen in year 2017 and 18, which is, I guess, works out about 12 bikes a day, which is up by 500 more bikes stolen against previous year. Now this has to be stopped. So we have a conservative police and crime commissioner, and work very closely with him. I've invited him last year to visit Queen Edith to meet the local community. If elected, I will work with City Council, local community and police to see if bike thefts can be tackled. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manus. And finally, Sam Davis.
Hi, it's interesting to be this side of the table for this event. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sam. I was until recently the chair of the Community Forum. I've stood down for the duration of this campaign. I'm going to take a slightly different tack. I'm not going to give you a plotted version of my biography, because you can come and ask me about that if you want to, but I don't think you'll vote for me because I live in the ward with a dog or whatever. I want you to know 3 things about me. The first is that I'm a problem solver. So my instinct is to look at what's going on in a system, not just try and fix the top level symptoms that you can see, but actually understand whether it's a problem with the status quo. And if it's a problem with the status quo, then that's what you work to fix. And that's why I'm standing as an independent, because in my opinion, the status quo is not serving Queen Edith well at the moment. The second thing you need to know is that I believe in evidence-based decision-making. Cambridge is a city of science, and yet some of the policy decisions and execution decisions that get made seem to bear precious little relation to understanding of the evidence or any reference to best practice and things that have been done elsewhere. We don't need to be reinventing the wheel all the time. And my belief in the value of that is such that I've taken myself back to university to do a master's. I'm older not only than my fellow students, but also all of my tutors. I'm doing a master's in sustainable urbanism because it's my profound belief that other places are handling growth better than we are handling it. and we should be learning from them. I am certainly learning from them. And then the third thing I want you to know about me is that I am a people person. Anyone who's ever sat down for a cup of coffee with me will know that I talk and I try to listen. I'm a networker. Part of the problem-solving instinct is to go and talk to the other people involved in the problem and see if we can puzzle it out together. So my vision for the role of an independent in Queen Edith would be to try and get beyond the deficits which tribal politics have left us with us, bring the community together, come up with something which is greater than the sum of its parts, and really try to knock on the head the problems which I know the other candidates are aware of, and I know have made attempts to solve, but we haven't got there, and that's why I think we need something different. Thank you.
Very much, Sam. Thanks. I think it's a nice thing about Queen Edith is we have 4 candidates here. One who has been our councillor, 3 others who've also worked a lot during the year around the area. I've stood for candidates before. We don't have a load of people here who no one's seen before, who've not been in the ward or anything like that. So it's really, really good to see. I wonder how many other wards can say that. So our second question of the 3 I'm going to do before the break talks about issues and priorities. And my question to the candidates is, what issues in the area are most important to you? And what do you intend to do about them, most importantly? And we'll start off with George again. This is like last year where I picked out green first every time. Now I'm picking yellow this time. Sorry about that, George.
So much.
Yeah, up to you. I would if you, because it's quite a lot of things.
So what issues in the area are most important to you? There are many issues in the area, and each one of them, however small it is, it's important to me. First of all, the happiness and the well-being of Queen Edith's residents. I want us to feel proud, comfortable and safe, living in one of the best worlds in Cambridge. Safety to and from work, safety to and from the school, safety to and from the shops. For that reason, I began working 8 years ago on improvements of the Edith roundabout. I wanted our residents to go in and out of the hospital safely, irrespective of the mode of transport they were using. We also want the Fenton Road residents to be able to safely cross the road and go to school and come in this particular school, and go to the shops and go home back safely. After hard work, we have managed to come up with the right design and, most importantly, raise the finances to do the job. And that came from AstraZeneca, as part of Section 106 requirement for us to give them planning permission. And I'm very proud to say that we have done a reasonably good job at the Edith roundabout. We have intelligent crossings, which are the sensors can sense when somebody is walking very, very slowly, and the lights will remain red for the cars until this person gets to the other side safely. And we have done the same thing for the bicycles, and that gives me great pleasure that we've done something successful. So once it's successful, we began looking at the Fenton Road roundabout, which is another accident spot, to first try and facilitate the pedestrian crossing, then the cycle crossing, and then the car crossing. Apart from safety, I also feel that the enjoyment and recreation of the residents is very important to me. I concentrated on improving the Nightingale Avenue Recreation Park. I improved the drainage in the entrance. I improved the car parking facilities there, and you had a maximum 3 hour because people from the other routes used to park there and leave their cars all day. And I introduced a trim trail. You have maintenance-free benches, strategically positioned all the way around so that you can watch your children and grandchildren play safely. I've requested 38 more trees to go to replace the old trees which are of the avenue, which they are 80 years old, and so when they die, these new trees will be about 20 years old to replace the old ones. And the biggest project I looked at there was the dilapidated pavilion. That looked like a sore thumb, and it's a lovely resource, but it has not been used. So I've managed to raise over £420,000 from Section 106 money to be spent to refurbish the pavilion. Yesterday I was in planning with Councillor McGurdy arguing for it to be arguing in support of the application, and I'm pleased to announce that we've got now the planning permission and we're ready to build. And I also like to take this opportunity to thank Rebecca and the community who designed this pavilion. We raised the money, you designed it, you came up with three drawings and you chose the best one, and we supported you to pass it, and that's going to be a wonderful resource for our community. There are other long-term issues in Queen Edith's, again on the roads. We have a dual usage on Queen Edith's Way. That needs to be looked at after we fix the Vendor Road roundabout junction, and after the junction at Robin Hood is fixed, then we need to find a solution for Queen Edith's Way. And we also need to fix Mowbray Road, because we have a cycle lane which is very narrow and not many people are really using it. They are too scared to use it, and everybody is riding on the pavement. I also see that we need to minimize the impact of unauthorized parking in our area as we grow, and to make sure that the GB1 provides a sustainable development. We are blessed as residents of Queen Edith. We have some of the best schools in the country in our wards. We have the best and regular bus service from Cambridge, from Addenbrooke's Hospital to the city. We have the CD1 and the Park Ride. We're 10 minutes cycle ride from the green open fields. And we're having our own South Railway station. Going to place. I don't know how long it's going to take the new mayor to install it, but that's going to happen. And also, if you happen to be sick, you just roll out of bed, and we have the best healthcare in the world, Addenbrooke's Hospital, just around the corner from us. By 2030, the experts tell us that there will be another 40,000 new jobs created in Cambridge. Some highly paid, some low paid jobs. We need to ensure there is a fair distribution of wealth and that we have enough affordable accommodation for everyone. We need to address the residents' concerns about unauthorized parking, as I said earlier on, by introducing double yellow lines where needed, or residential parking restrictions where residents require it. And we need to think of reduction of traffic from all the development which is happening around us. Thank you so much.
These have almost come out in the same order again, but not quite. So, Dan, brief.
Right. The biggest problems or concerns I see in this ward are as follows. It would be housing, transport, crime, and the environment. Now, in regards to housing, as we know, there are many young people here who grow up in this ward and they cannot then afford to own their own property, and equally it's getting harder to rent. So private rents are going up and people are in shared accommodation, and that is a serious problem. Now, with regards to new housing, obviously there is a need for new housing, but it needs to be done in a sustainable way, and I agree with Sam, it needs to be done in a way that's actually better for the community, it doesn't detract. Do I need this further away from you, by the way? Last year I told that under my mouth.
No,
okay. Okay, good. So, with regards to local development, I want to have viability assessments and much better local scrutiny. It seems to me that local residents don't always know what happens with regards to new development proposals, and I want to make sure that residents are consulted properly so they can hear about it. With regards to transport, the second issue, I think I'm too close to the speaker, hang on. I'll wander. With regards to transport, I want to have a system. Okay, back. Good.
Close to you. Sorry.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, conspiracy.
Sorry.
Okay, right, I'll start from the scratch. No, with regards to transport, I want to have a much more joined up approach, and that's why I think localism doesn't always work with regards to some of our transport issues. There is a serious issue in our city and outside with regards to stagecoach. Now, stagecoach, of course, is a monopoly. There is very little chance for other companies to have a look in, and Lewis Herbert said there's about £10 million need of investment to try to find any way to try and take them on and have another company involved, or for instance to have companies put into their own bus service. So I think we need to have a much better approach and be firmer with stagecoach as best we can. And I want to see better cycle paths as well, because as we know there's been a huge development in cycle paths between Adam Brooks and the city centre. There are still parts of our ward where there's shared path use between pedestrians and cyclists. And I know personally how embarrassing to apologise as you're cycling, or when you're pushing a pushchair or a pram to move out of the way of bicycles. So I want to make sure we work on those particular parts of the area, particularly Mowbray Road, as you were saying, George. Now, crime is an issue that seems to be on the rise at the moment. I don't know if you've seen recently, there's been an issue with vandalism at one of our recreation grounds. There's also been vandalism at other parks around the area. I went to South Area Committee. I actually was there to ask the police, could they refocus their efforts on our green spaces, on our children's play areas in particular. And it was quite shocking. If you were there, the police officer who spoke to us told us that when there's a call through to a problem in the ward or in the whole south of the city, she is the only officer on duty at that time. So if you think we can protect the area on the cheap, which seems to be national policy, then I suggest we're in deep trouble. So for that reason, I want to work with the police. There is better funding coming for community policing, but I want to make sure that's focused in the right areas, which is why I was at the South Area Committee asking for it. And equally, I want to have stronger neighbourhood watches as well, because it seems to me that we can try to tackle some of these problems by reporting issues straight away. And the message we got from the police that evening was, if we report things as soon as possible, then they're actually able to build up a picture as to where the problems are, and then they can come along and solve them. Finally, the environment is something that I don't think we talk about enough, and maybe in some ways we're trying to arrange the deck chairs for the Titanic. There's a climate emergency at this very moment that the Labour Council is declaring, and we have a climate charter, the idea of course to make Cambridge carbon zero. This is the most fundamental crisis facing humanity, and of course all politics is local, and what can we do locally to make a difference? I think it's going to be about having better transport, having fewer cars on our streets. How we do that is going to be quite tough over the next few years, and don't believe everyone here who says it's an easy solution, it's really not. But I think we must be working better as a community to make sure more people are cycling if they can be, and more people are using public transport, and we're doing everything we can as a council to provide access points for electric cars to be used to make sure that we can achieve that target of Cambridge becoming carbon zero. Thank you. I hope you could hear some of that.
That's all right, that should be fun. So a slightly different order then. So what issues in the area are most important to you? Sam Davis.
It's really great to have an opportunity to talk to you because it's working. We've managed to sabotage me, turn the damn thing off. It takes more than that to keep me quiet. Yeah, it's really good for me to finally have a chance to talk about this. As chair of the Community Forum, I have to respect the fact that the Community Forum is non-aligned and non-campaigning. And for a long time, that has been a frustration to me because there have been things that I've wanted to say that I have not been able to say in that capacity. So I'll say them now. Local issues. Well, campus traffic situation is a local issue, but it's also actually the antithesis of a local issue, because when you think about the catchment area that it has and the distances that staff and patients and visitors travel to use those facilities, we should all be worried about what's going on there. Rather late in the day, a study was reported a couple of months ago about forecasts for the growth of visits to the campus. It's looking at 30 to 40% increase in trips to the campus in the next 5 years, and then another 30 to 40% on top of that, which arrives at a total number of daily trips in 2031 of 67,500, which is kind of on a par with daily trips to Stansted Airport, if that helps you make sense of those numbers. Okay, that's a lot of trips. And the big problem is that the status quo has not given us a mechanism for dealing with that. The status quo has promised us jam tomorrow in the shape of Cambridge South Station. Well, best estimates for that are probably 2025, because it's an incredibly complicated engineering project, and Network Rail obviously won't be rushed with it. And the Mayor's Metro, looking at maybe 2028. So we have potentially a decade of trying to deal with the fallout from the growth of the campus, and yet we have no credible plan. And even more remarkably than that, we've been able to see this coming down the tracks, excuse the pun, for 20 years, because that's how long the vision for the growth of the biomedical campus has been in place. So that would be my number one issue. And I think there was a second part of the question, wasn't there, which was, what do you intend to do about it? I can go into the detail of that later, but for now, what I would say is, I wouldn't be sitting back passively assuming that someone else is going to solve that problem in a way which is acceptable to the residents of Queen Edith and enables us to retain any kind of quality of life. So I would be using the contacts that I have already made on the campus with their management team in AstraZeneca, with their comms team at Papworth, to try and knock some heads together. Not in an aggressive way, not in a confrontational way. It's as much in their interest to collaborate as it is ours. But just see if we can get some traction on this problem, because the big solutions are a long way off. The second thing is development pressure. My reason for choosing to stand now, or one of the reasons for choosing to stand now, is that I think the next year is critical in terms of development in the area, and there's two dimensions to that. One is that the land which has already been approved for housing on Wards Causeway, known as GB1 and GB2, will start to be developed. The developer of GB2 is already drawing up plans. They're going to start their community engagement next month. I've talked to them, and I think it's imperative that they hear from residents how we would like that new neighbourhood to fit with what we already have in our neighbourhood. And I also think it's important that it's built in a way which is sustainable, not just in terms of the environment, though obviously that's very important, but also in terms of people. I've helped set up the Residents Association on 9 Wells, which is another of our new developments off Abraham Road. And it's very obvious that that community has had its hands tied when it comes to bedding in and becoming a viable community in its own right, because they've been completely deprived of any kind of community space that will enable them to get together, to mix, to get to know each other. And I would be beyond disappointed if the development that went on GB1 and GB2 emulated that pattern, and I think we have to get in there now. Following on from that, the other development issue in the next year is that we've just kicked off the next local plan cycle. So the local plan is the process by which areas for development are identified. There's going to be huge pressure all the way around this ward to dig further into the green belt, to release space either for employment or for housing. And I think it's absolutely imperative that, again, there is a really strong and unambiguous message coming out of Queen Edith that we will not be the sacrificial lambs of the growth that certain bodies are pushing for in this city. The third thing is it's a bit of a buzz phrase, I guess, social capital. I think Queen Edith could have so much more care and attention paid to its social capital. And social capital is the stuff that really is at the heart of unpicking some of the problems that Dan's talked about with antisocial behaviour. It's at the heart of finding ways to deal with loneliness. It's great that we've got the pavilion. It's absolutely great. I'm chuffed to bits. Why is it taking 3.5 years? The community forum has been waiting for that space to enable us to unlock all sorts of activities. It will probably be another year before it's actually delivered. That's a long time of a lot of people looking and failing to find a place to be together. So I've had some successes with trying to get activities going through the community forum. I think there's a lot more we could do, and I would hope that by standing as a candidate I can advance a way of thinking which says we have the power, we can empower ourselves to do more. So those are my three. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And finally, members.
Because the question is what issues are most important to you and what you intend to do. For me, to start with, care home is very important. I deeply care for older people in the community, all of us getting old. And I regularly try to visit care homes in Queen Edith to spend some time with dementia patients. Care homes in Queen Edith, my experience, is beyond reach for many. We do not have cost-effective, affordable care homes. And it is important that we have one, if not more. If I'm elected, I will try to work with council and local developer to see if cost-effective care homes can be built in Queen Edith. Unaffordable housing. Housing in Cambridge City has become simply unaffordable for many. I'm campaigning to have affordable, low-cost housing for teachers, secretaries, care workers, emergency service providers, and also young first-time buyers. They cannot buy a house in Cambridge City anymore. I'm working with Cambridgeshire and pt1 Combined Authority there as an advisor, also advising him to ensure that enough numbers of low-cost houses are built in Cambridge City to meet the current requirement. Traffic congestion and parking, as I've highlighted in my previous speech, I've been working since last 4 years to tackle traffic, the parking issues near Edinburgh's and Hills Road Sixth Form College. And I'm also working with Edinburgh's to see if they can reduce the parking charges for the staff members in multi-story car parking. That will probably reduce the traffic congestion that we see around Edinburgh's and other places. Burglaries and thefts. Queen Edith, we have had several burglaries in last couple of years. I personally visited the houses which were burgled. Within 24 hours I visited those houses. I've also invited our Police and Crime Commissioner to come and meet some of the victims, and also I arranged a community meeting for Queen Edith residents to talk with Police Commissioner directly. I've done that last year, and if I'm elected, I will continue my work with local community, police and the PCC to reduce the burglaries. Library. Library is a great place to visit. I want to see more children visiting local libraries to borrow books, even for us as well. And for that reason, I'm campaigning to save local libraries in Queen Edith. Community center. I believe every neighboring ward in Cambridge has a community center. Why we don't have? She touched the point, and I would say we don't have community center. It is very important. Community center is an amazing concept where you get to see people from all backgrounds. You make new friends. You can have different activities like dance, drama, music, fundraising for charity, coffee morning. And unfortunately, we don't have a community center for people of all backgrounds in Queen Edith. If I am elected, I will work with City Council, whoever the authority, to ensure that we have one as soon as possible. Heaven closer, I believe that Heaven in Woolston Way is a supported living service to accommodate small number of older people with mental health issues. We have a small facility. I believe it's a 8 self-contained flats with a communal room, little garden, a place for carer to sleep overnight, and I strongly believe that our community needs that. And for that reason, I would campaign to save any possible closure of Heaven. Cambridge Metro. The development of A428 Camborne to Cambridge Transport Corridor has finally got a momentum to go ahead, because Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority agreed to various findings to transform the previous guided busway scheme to the wider Cambridge metro system. I think that will help the Cambridge metro system to start much earlier than we thought. South train station at Edinburgh's, I think, as I said before, I'm lucky that we have a conservative mayor in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. With his help, he's working very hard to deliver the South train station in Edinburgh's. I'm working closely with him. I think it will help us tremendously to bring in employees for biomedical campus and also for AstraZeneca and other related companies in that site. It will also improve connectivity with London, reduce traffic congestion in Queen Edith, and also ease the pressure on Central train station in Cambridge. If you go in the morning to catch a train for London, you will see there is no place even to stand. So I think it's going to help us a lot. I think that's about it. Thank you very much.